like, I've got a bit of fear. I just want I just want that extra validation. But before I was like, wouldn't trust my answer, would have to go to everyone outside myself for everything. And I see that's kind of the biggest change in me, how I don't do that. I never go outside myself for the answers now.
And if you go outside yourself, what your life direction becomes is some sort of aggregate of what your circle of friends looks like and your family. So they're always reinforcing the reality of their level of consciousness. Right. And you're actually not really in that mix. You're not really considered there. Everyone's seeing through their own lens. And let's face it, a lot of the time our friends and our family are not at the level of consciousness that we truly want.
No, and I'm really kind of having to accept that. Actually, that's been a big lesson for me in the past year, on realization. You know, I was sort of in denial, I suppose, before this past year. And I've had to accept that. No, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, everyone I was surrounded by, there was no talk of spirituality. That was for crazy people and woo. It was woo-woo and nonsense, basically. And I suppressed that within myself, even though deep down I was attracted to that. And I knew deep down there was something else, but I just didn't have the tangible evidence. And meeting that woman and even the angel cards from my friends in London helped me to kind of get a bit of tangible evidence. But basically that's where I was at with my family and friends. So I was like the first one that we'll say I'm not like being from the ego. I was the first one to start questioning. And so obviously the consciousness started to rise then, but everyone else was still on that same level of not questioning and disconnected. So obviously then it just got more and more for me. So then it's hard then to resonate, you know, the gap starts to get wider and wider with your relationships and your friendships, which I found very difficult in the past year, because it can be a lonely journey, the whole awakening. And if you're the only one looking for truth and everyone else is like, no, I don't want to know. Like, it's like, eventually it just doesn't, it's too much, too big. The gap's too big. And that's been me this year, where I've gone too far that way. And there's just a lot of people in my life didn't want to know.
Because most of these people are doing the same thing. They're on mechanical loops of their personality. And they just stay there. And until they get something real happening in their life, they just continue doing what they're doing. And so you're growing, you're progressing, you're following that crack of the personality that's opening more and more and more to source, to the divine. And that's infusing your life, and it's allowing you to grow and to nourish and to feel yourself and get reconnected. And then you look at these people and they're like, this is just the husk of a person. You know, operating on these patterns. And like, you know, I talk about these things and they get very dismissive, or they get angry or whatever, or they try to laugh it off.
Exactly. And that was the thing. It was like anything there was no common ground in the end for what we could speak about, because everything I seemed to talk about would trigger them completely, because they're not doing that sort of the healing work and the inner work. So then, it just becomes very uncomfortable for both of us. So yeah, but then what happens is you end up having all the soul tribe coming in that resonate with that.
Yes.
But
they don't come in right away, right? You have to kind of go through your own breaking away, your own hermit tarot. You know, that is a part of the spiritual journey, right? Before you can rejoin everyone and play, you got to be a hermit.